Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are at Genesis 6:5, and just pay attention. Sometimes if your translation is different from mine, that is a good thing. So if you notice something, please feel free to share, because I translate it differently based on my translation through Sephardi, which is the Torah and Jerusalem Bible translation. If you see something, feel free to point it out.
Starting in 6:5.
6:5. 6:5.
Okay.
Vayar Adonai, Vayar Yud. So God sees. What does God see? Ki Rapa Ra'at Ha'adam Ba'aretz. So what is Rapa? Big, wide, abundant. That's why we are called Rab, because learning is abundant. So we are called Rab, right? It means wide and abundant, meaning in learning and in teaching. So a female rabbi in Israel right now is called Rabba. Right? This word here. People want to say Rabbanit. Rabbanit is the wife of the rabbi. Although some people are calling women rabbis Rabbanit. A lot of people, I choose Rabba. So Rabba, wide, big, expansive, was what? Ra'at Ha'adam. The Ra of Ha'adam. Evil of humanity. V'chol yetzer machshavot libo rak kol hayom. Right? And the kind of the formation of people's thoughts in their heart is only evil all day long. Vayinachem yod ki asa et ha'adam ba'aretz vayit'atzev el libo. So God regrets that God made the human, the earthling, on the earth. Vayit'atzev el libo. And so this word, it's a very interesting word. We studied it last year and the year before together. Our whole session was on this word. So I'm going to remind us. Vayit'atzev. What is the root of this word?
Atzav.
Yes, and what is atzav?
Sad.
Sad. Exactly right. So we think of, in Hebrew, sad. So those of you who know Hebrew, this is not that. Why is this different? What form is this? What's the binyan? Hitpa'el. Very good. What is hitpa'el? What defines a hitpa'el verb? Reflexive. So how is this about atzav, but it's a verb and it's reflexive? How do you translate it? It's about God.
He sat himself.
God saddened God's self. Okay. So very interesting that it's a reflexive verb, because that's not usually what you would say. You would say, even in Hebrew, and God was sad, right? But that's not what we have here. We have a vav in front. That's important grammatically. And this hitpa'el form. So because we're not going to stay here too long, I'm instead waiting for sources. This source from Skip Mullen, PhD, about angelomuja, which means essentially mass murder, which is what the flood is. Mass murder is from the Greek. And so, but he looks at this word, the root atzav, relates to physical pain as well as to emotional sorrow. Words similar in Hebrew, right? That we have our feel, chara, yaga. So we have all these like kind of words that are similar. But that's not the end of the story. He points to this vav consecutive plus the imperfect hitpa'el form, reflexive. It turns back on the subject. The grief is not outward. That's why it's hitpa'el, because the grief is not directed outward. It's inward. It's an inward movement affecting God's self. Furthermore, this vav in front of this form of the verb tells us that grief extends through time. It isn't like I dropped something on my foot, it hurt, and I moved on. Right? That vav says she hurt then, it's still hurting, right? And it's going to hurt when she wakes up tomorrow. So it extends the verb over time. As if God felt is feeling the grief in the present and will feel the grief in the future. God's sorrow over the creation is eternal. Even to this day, God feels the pain of Genesis. So this is how, if you don't know the Hebrew, it's easy to miss what the authors are doing. They're saying God is devastated and is not going to get over it, right? So that is the condition that brings the answer that is the flood. That's what brings Andrew Lamusha, is God's regret and God's internal, self-reflective, abundant grief at humanity's abundant evil.
Isn't it also God? Doesn't God grieve also?
So definitely, I think that's in the white fire, right? If we're reading the white fire between the black fire, I think 100% God is so sad, like beyond sad. It's devastated that humanity, that God created in. We talked about this last time. We talked about, well, if we're created in God's image and we're Ra, then it means God must have some capacity for Ra. If we're B'Tselem Elohim, and the word Tselem gets used here, right? Tselem is used, right? I mean, in this, Genesis business, and we're created B'Tselem Elohim, well then, if we're Ra, what does that say about, maybe God learns, part of God's sadness is that God learns that these humans created are Ra. God learns something about God that is devastating to God.
That God isn't bound.
That
All power.
Or maybe that
God could have made humans so they were perfect.
or that God isn't all good.
Right. Yeah.
If we're created in God's image and all of a sudden we're only Ra, all Hayom, all the day, then God maybe learned something about God that is really upsetting.
This one of the favors from other letters
Is what?
the fact that God blamed himself for.
Yes.
And
Yes.
how does we just
We'll go there later.
okay.
That's
Question: if God repents or regrets this creation, this evil evil, then why didn't God wipe out everybody, including Noah, like everybody, and start over again?
right. So that is one that we're not told why, but God does not choose to make a different creature. Right? Because God could have said, "Oh, that was." If it's about there's some Ra in me, then I'm not making them B'Tselem Elohim this time, right? I'll make them in part of my image, the good side, right?
I apologize.
So it seems that God is not interested in fundamentally changing the human being. God wants to change society. So God
is the reconstructionist.
of what there is of society and says, okay, I'm gonna start again with this guy and his family, who is Ish Tzaddik. Noach is called Ish Tzaddik in his generation. And the rabbis really stress a lot of midrash around in his generation. Why does it have to add that? And there's rarely rabbinic consensus. In this case, the consensus seems to be because it's all relative. That Noach is not necessarily the most fabulous guy, but given the context, he's the best of what there is, right? And so God starts with the best of what is left, right? After this decline that we see from Adam and Chava all the way to now to generation. Yeah, very nice, Lisa. Lisa says maybe we're the 10,000th attempt. And God was like, well, it seems this is the best I can do. I guess this is the kind of model like I'm stuck with. Let's pick the best functioning model and go from there.
Didn't work out.
Well, talk to Sam. I mean, if you want to know mass destruction, talk.
Yeah.
Right. So it's and Eliana texted me, "Oh my God, Mom, you can't believe what's all over the news here." And I'm like, "It's all over the news here too." For those of us who take time enough to check beyond the edge of our nose for what's happening in the world, and I include myself in that. And so it's like, but if you see the pictures from Spain, like it is mass devastation and destruction. She's in Barcelona. So when those waters recede, what's left behind is the most disgusting, smelly, corpse-ridden, animal-ridden, disease-filled, right? So we tend to think about the water, but really people who have experienced a flood, and everybody in the ancient Near East has a flood story, so we know a catastrophic flood is part of every Near Eastern culture's experience. The memory, like we talk about the water, but the memory is of the massive destruction and disgustingness that leaves behind that takes a really long time to clear and to recover from. Okay, so what does God say in verse 7? It's Adam, right? I'm going to wipe out the Adam Asher Barati that I created, Me'al Pnei Ha'adamah, from on the face of the earth, from person, human, to animal, and everything that creeps, even to the Of Hashemayim, the birds of the heavens. Ki nichamti ki asitam, ki asitim. So, because I regret that I created them, that I made them. The disjunctive vav, not the conjunctive vav, but Noach matzah chen be'enei Adonai. Noach finds favor in the eyes of God. Now, this is not the first time we're going to get someone chosen because they found favor in God's eyes without us getting any reason why. Who else? Abraham. It's a love story. Genesis is a love story. God is disgusted, God is devastated, and God yet seems to favor this guy Noach. Favors Abraham, loves Abraham. We are not told why. Yes.
There's no
Ever love.
with comfort or
Football.
So you cannot read the Hebrew nichamti. You can't read the Hebrew nichamti and not go on verse 8 to Noach and not connect those two things, right? So nichamti and the first two letters are the name Noach. 100%. There seems to be a hint at a redemption from the destructive that God is experiencing. Noach seems to be some kind of answer for that nichamti. I regret. What if you spell Noach backwards? What do you get? Huh? What's Noach backwards? Mariana. Chain.
Grace.
Noach backwards is chain.
Oh, grace. From
But Noach matzah chain be'enei Adonai. Noach found chain, grace in the eyes.
Yeah.
Noach backwards. That is not an accident.
Admire yourself, Mariana.
This is beautiful literature. This is purposeful. That Noach, opposite, right, of how God is responding to the rest of humanity. Hold Noach up to a mirror, see its opposite, and it's chain. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Eile Toldot Noach. Now we're going to get, whenever we get Toldot, Eile Toldot, we're getting now a big sipur. We're getting some big story. This after the filler that we just had. All right. So Eile Toldot, pay attention. Something radical is happening here. Something big is happening. Eile Toldot Noach. So verse 9. What are we told about Noach? Ish tzaddik. He's a tzaddik. Now that is not the Hasidic interpretation. Right? This is biblical Hebrew. This is not rabbinic Hebrew, and it is not medieval or Kabbalistic language. This is very simple biblical Hebrew. Tzaddik, righteous, period. People don't eat the crumbs that fall from his mouth around the table. It's not that kind of tzaddik. Right? He is ish tzaddik. He is righteous. And what else do we know? Tamim. I don't love this translation of perfect. Would somebody have another translation?
naive. It's naive. Naive.
Mariana, are you saying naive?
Yes, in Hebrew, tamim, in the usual Hebrew, tamim is naive.
Right. Okay. So naive is now, I would say, a contemporary translation, right? But it originates here. And it originates tamim is simple. Ishtam, a simple person, right? Not very complicated, not very, right? And so it's evolved into what you heard Mariana say, who was a speaker, that now when you say that, it means naive, right? Originating from this kind of simple, pure, if you will, right? Innocence. Okay, these are all the resonances. If you go to a Jewish grave place, what is it, grave place called?
Cemetery.
Thank you. If you go to a Jewish cemetery and look at the headstones, you will often see Ishtam. This was an Ishtam. So it's got a positive connotation traditionally for us. But it's funny because when Mariana says naive, that tends to have a little bit of a negative, right? They don't really know what's going on. Very interesting. Okay, so he's Ish Tamim. He was in his generation, B'dorotav, right? This is the qualifier. Et Elohim hitalech Noach. Noach walked with God. Again, it's a reflexive verb. God is yityatzeving, right? Stewing in devastation and depression and sadness. And Noah is hitaleching. Noah is self-walking with God. All right. How does this tie into our stories coming about Abraham, the next particular guy we're going to get?
Well, he was walking with God.
What we know is that Abraham and Sarah are going to be called Lech Lecha. Go, walk. Right? So again, you have to know this is literature. This is beautiful literature. Noah is the first hitalech with God. And direct Abraham and Sarah, Lech. Go, walk. All right. So Noah has three sons, Shem, Ham, and Yafet. We're not going to stay here very long. And so then the earth is filled, right? What is the earth filled with? Tell me the Hebrew.
Wow.
The earth is filled with Hamas. The world is filled with Hamas. And nope, and nope. No can do. So it's Rosh Tevot in Arabic. It's what is Rosh Tevot in Arabic? Thank you. An acronym. But you cannot convince me. Someone tried. An Israeli tried to convince me that this has nothing to do with Hamas, and you cannot convince me. You never convinced me that Hamas does not know that the Hebrew derivative is violence, devastation, right? Because that's their MO. I mean, I'm not making that up. They'll tell you that. A terrorist organization is about creating terror by creating chaos, right? And violence. It's not my judgment. That's their self-definition. So you can't tell me they wouldn't avail themselves of a name that may be an acronym, but that, comes from our Torah, right? That then evolves into a lot of Muslim literature. You just never can. So, yes. God sees that there's Hamas. Says, nope, absolutely not. So God looks upon the earth and behold, it is corrupt. All flesh had been corrupted on the earth. Funny people love to pick on verses like this for, genetic engineering, right, of things. Some of us like to pick it out to go, yeah, if we're not careful about, toxins coming down the river. Look what happens to tadpoles. Right, so each side picks this verse for its arguments, right? About we're warned what all creatures are messed up, and God says to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, because the world is filled, the land is filled with Hamas, and therefore I'm going to destroy everything." With andalusia, there is no individual innocence or guilt, right? It is collective punishment. So lots of people want to struggle with, well, what about with andalusia? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there's some semi-decent people. It doesn't matter. Collective punishment. And there are times where we deliver collective punishment. And if you don't believe me, look at our world today. right? And we, it's a complication of what it means to have to deal with something so big that you can't discriminate in every instance the level of guilt or innocence of who's involved in the punishment, the action, the consequence. And so it's here. So lest we say, oh, well, that was then, we're so much wiser now, or we have fixed that problem. Of course not. So, and there are lots of people who are going to want to blame God here. But we are created in the home, right? So we human beings deliver consequences that result in indiscriminate killing, no matter how careful we try to be, indiscriminate killing of innocent.
Noah.
So Bert is going to point out one of the reasons that the rabbis say it's qualified that Noach was Ish Tzaddik V'Tamim in his generation, because in another generation, this guy, Abe, what is Abe going to do when God says, I'm about to deliver Andromesia to stone?
He argues.
If you're just, you can't do that if there are innocent people there. You can't bring Andromesia. You're supposed to be fair. Andromesia is not fair. Right. Noah? No. So the rabbis fault Noah for not arguing with God. Now, what a crazy. We take it as normative, but think about how nuts that is, right? That our foundational stories involve, right, favor for the person who challenges the divinity.
But doesn't it point out when it said in Noah's context? So the context of Noah is different.
Correct, which is why he's chosen, even though he didn't argue. But I'm just saying the rabbis are the ones who say, what does that qualifier mean? He failed to challenge God because he was in a generation that he was the best of what there was. But in other words, it's just crazy that we come from a tradition that our heroes that we write about, our foundational heroes, are celebrated when they challenge the divinity.
That explains why there's so many Jewish lawyers.
Why there's so many Jews love to argue. Exactly. Right. You're gonna pick a career, pick what we have had from the beginning, argue.
Argue all the people who got
Who struggle, right? Well, there's arguments about what Israel means, but we're not going to go there right now. So now here's what you're going to do, God says. God says, you are going to make a thing which has never been made before. So we can't jump to a translation, right? Like you're going to make a teva, Noah. And here's what a teva looks like.
Yeah.
It is 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and the height 30 cubits. Okay, so I'm not a spatial person. This doesn't speak to me so much. It's big, right? It's very big. It's colossal. All right, so he's to build a teva that's really big, and he gives measurements. I'm sure he said he understood what that cubit business meant. 16, a cubit is from the tip of a typical to the elbow. So 300 of those. The numbers guy over here, our geometry specialist, our mathematician, says it is a foot and a half.
Nice.
So think about the ancient world, that's big. Like it may not be so big for us who have oil tankers or whatever, and what is those things, carriers, that take helicopters on them. And so in the ancient world, this would have been a massive construction for just a regular guy to take on with his 3 Nebuchadnezzar Yeshiva Bocher sons. Okay. All right.
Maybe the most department
The secret is his wife.
So verse 16 says, and additionally, here's the measurements of it. Sohar ta'aseh teva. A sohar are to make for the teva. And it's supposed to be this high. And then you're going to make a petach, an opening in the teva, in its side, so things can get in and out. All right. So we're not told why there's a tzohar, and this is the only time this word appears in Torah. So since tzohar is a hapex legomenon, a word that appears once only, it is not possible to look other places to understand what it might mean in a different context. A hapex legomenon is Latin for a word that appears only one time in the Bible. So since it's a hapex legomenon, we have no comparison to know what this is. But just looking at context, it seems to be some kind of window. Because think about it. You have a wooden ark. It's going to be filled with hay and animals. What is your light source going to be? Fire? Not a great idea, right? Like even on an airplane or a ship today, fire is like, You can say, okay, well, hopefully nothing will happen. Okay, well, sorry, right? That's not good enough. So just using our brains, if you have to have light, then it makes sense you would need a Torah, right? A source of light, some way of letting and ventilation, right? Because presumably you're not going to open the door mid-flight. There's a flood, right? But if there's a flood, what's happening? How does a flood happen in our story? What makes the flood? Rain. What does the sky look like when there's rain? Okay. So even with a tzohar, presumably Noach and his family have a problem, right? Like it's and windows in the ancient world were not glass. We forget they didn't have glass. Glass was very expensive. Glass was preserved for the upper classes. It's not the side of a boat that you and the yeshiva buchers put together, right? So the tzohar presumably is like ancient windows, which is a plank put in place that you then remove when you want air and light to come in.
And water.
What are you going to do? It's raining torrentially. How helpful is it tzohar? Right? There's not a lot of light and a lot of water.
But I mean, they need water to drink.
They need water to drink. Okay, so that's beautiful. So let in some water, and you can put a bucket there and water on the camp. Like I don't know. But you see that the rabbis who are looking at this realize there's a couple of problems here. With the solution to life in the teva being that you put it so high. That's practically not the best answer to Noah's very serious set of circumstances. All right, so let's go and look at when you have a serious problem like that, what does that mean for the rabbis? What is it an invitation to? Midrash. Lidrosh. It is an invitation, Lidrosh, to unpack, read more into this, to read into the white fire, not the black fire. So we're going to read into their white fire. Harvey.
I'm just wondering, do we ever wonder what Noah's neighbors ever said? Why are you building that big boat?
So not only that, Harvey, not only do the rabbis say that the neighbors were talking, they go so far as to say that's the reason God has him build a teva. To give the neighbors an opportunity to give the neighbors opportunity to do tshuva, to change their ways, and to also hitalech Elohim, right? So, but they don't. They laugh at him. Yeah. They scoff at him and call him crazy. And here we go. So, and one of my students that I was studying this for this Shabbat, for her bat mitzvah this Shabbat, and I said, so what this is about? Like, and they call him crazy. And the kid said, well, didn't they call the people who thought we could put people on the moon crazy? They absolutely did. Right? Don't you have to be a little crazy? Just a little crazy? And he goes, maybe it's because people had to believe that the impossible was possible.
That's a rabbi in the
They're going to I'm just saying to the point of what the neighbors noticing. Some rabbis say that's the point of the ark, is so that the neighbors will talk and ask him what he's doing. And he explains as a tzaddik that you have to worship Hashem Yitbarach and do and daven, 3 times a day and put on tefillin and put on your talis and and then if they should come around, right, kosher lions, then they could have been saved. So it's not like crazy for us to imagine the rabbis like that. All right, but let's go from what we just laid out as some of the problems with Zohar being the solution to the light problem. Because that's what you might think it is. Air, light, whatever. Okay. So we're the first to notice that that's not necessarily a great answer to the problem. Y'all need it. People at home have it. All right. So people at home already have Bereshit Rabbah, text number 2. On this verse, Sohar Ta'aseh L'Teva, right? They're gonna translate, they're gonna unpack this verse, because that's why it's in quotes. Sohar Ta'aseh L'Teva. Rabbi Agar Bar Kahana said, Sohar means window, chalon. Rab Levi says, Sohar means margalit, a precious gem. I just love having Carol do the vocals. All right, so let's go forward. So now the Talmud in Sanhedrin says, with regard to the verse that Sohar you shall make for the ark, Rabbi Yochanan says that the Holy One, blessed be God, said to Noach, set precious stones and jewels in the ark so that they will shine for you as the afternoon sun. What is afternoon in Hebrew? Zoharayim. Bring that word forward here. Zohar. Zoharayim. That's where they're going to go. This is Hebrew, people. The world was created with Hebrew. If it's Zoharayim must have something to do with the Zohar. Duh. That's how it works. So if that's true, how does Zohar relate to Zoharayim? They must be. And so they say it's a jewel going all the way back to Midrash Rabbah that we just read. The Talmud knows Midrash Rabbah and says God said to not put jewels in the Teva, that they will shine like Zoharayim, like the afternoon. It took me forever. That makes no sense to me at all. But one commentating on this commentary said it's like a chandelier that you just, before we had electricity, you took the light of a candle and refracted it through the crystals of a chandelier, and it threw the light across the room from this one little source that would have lit up a little bit of the floor. Once you refract it through crystal, it throws that light everywhere, but not everywhere, but way bigger. That's I'm like, oh, that makes a little more sense, right? That light, the little bit of light that there was would be refracted through these gems and would light up the inside of the ark. Get so right, as if it were afternoon.
But if it's dark all the time in the flood, then there isn't.
Well,
where's
I don't know about you, but I come from thunderstorms. It's not completely black. Torrential downpours, raining cats and dogs. It's not black. There's some light. It's black at night, but there's some light that comes through the clouds, right? This guy, Jeffrey Dennis from Jewish Myth, Magic, and Mysticism says the fact that the word for noon, zenith, Zoharayim, shares the same root, but especially because of similarity to the word Zohar, shine, radiant, triggered an assumption that it is it is a form of light source rather than an aperture to let light in. All right, so Zohar, remember the Holy Zohar? The book of Jewish mysticism, the first book of Jewish mysticism, the Zohar, it's about radiance. So for the rabbis, they know Zohar and Zohar, and they're close because etymologically they're not. But we're talking about people who are listening and talking the language. It's close orally, A-U-R, orally, it's close. And the meaning is close. If the Zohar is to let light in, Zohar is about light shining out. So for them, it's like, so it's not that it lets light in. Noach was to put a light source up there
But is
to
it,
light the ark.
is it the light of God? You know, when you talk about something.
Dana, then star, right? Of course it's the light of God. Of course that's where the rabbis. Targum Yonatan may be the first source to claim that Zohar was a luminous stone pulled from the primordial river Pishon, one of the rivers around Eden, and it's elaborated on in Genesis Rabbah. During the entire 12 months that Noach was in the ark, he did not require light of the sun by day or the light of the moon by night. He had a polished stone which he hung up. When it was dim, he knew it was daytime, and when he knew it was nighttime. Because why would Noach need to know if it was day or night?
Who told him how many days?
He's not going to know how many days they're going to be out there. He's there for however long God decides they're out there.
You needed to know when to start.
Wait, the rabbis will say, good word. You know, very, very rabbinic. Hazal, our wise sages will say, because you have to know when to stop. You have to know when to stop. And when it was, okay. So I love that. The rabbis would 100% go there, but let's say we're not going to go there. Why practically would he need to know when it's day and when it's night? He had to feed the animals. Some animals are not nocturnal. Some animals sleep all day. You have to be feeding them when they're awake. So you have to know if it's day or night to know when to feed the animals. You're going to keep me up tonight. I'm going to be claustrophobic in bed thinking about no air in the table. All right. So Sonar Ta'asel Teva, his Kuni is going to come and say, what does that mean? You are to provide means of illumination for the ark. Right, Dana? According to most opinions, this is a reference to the window that Noach used later on to dispatch the raven and the turtle dove. During the period that this window was kept closed, suspended in that area a jewel, which sparkled and provided interior lighting. Right? So now we're going to get an answer that combines both interpretations of Zohar. When we understand this in the manner our sages, some of whom spoke only of the jewel and others only of the window, are both correct, except that neither of them gave us the full explanation. They just had half the story. It's both. When the Torah told interior lighting, it was because during most of the days of the deluge, illumination on the sky was absent, neither sun nor moon nor stars being visible. Noah had to use his ingenuity to provide for interior light. Okay. All right, but we're not going to stop at Zohar. The tradition goes further. It's amazing. It's just so amazing. This is just so fun for me. So hope for you too. Watch what they're going to do. It's even better. So Zohar, already we've gotten all this stuff about Zohar, a gem, a source of illumination, and at the divine, right? Like light as wisdom, light at blah, 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 right? The metaphors go on forever, but they don't stop there. Watch what they do. The same verse. If we take the word teva, here, in our case, it means this big, colossal boat, right? What does teva mean to the rabbis? Like, they know this word because they know Torah, and they know all the midrashim, and all the texts. So they know teva from lots of places. It's not a hexagon. So if we look at teva from, what is it called? A chest, a box, a case, an ark, particularly here, word, meaning the written word, especially, music, like a bar of music, a measure of music. In Rabbinic Hebrew, the teva is the holy ark, where the is, and it can mean now a letterbox, right? A box that holds words. A letterbox is a box that holds words that people are sending, right? A mailbox. But I don't want to say letterbox. Letters, people. The Baal Shem Tov, right, founder of Hasidism, he didn't know he was founding Hasidism. The Baal Shem Tov is these two words, Tzohar and Teva. And what was our verse? A Tzohar you shall make in the Teva. So they're going to deal with both words now. We dealt with Zohar a little, now let's deal with Teva. Zohar not only means window, but an illumination, a spark, a radiance, a transformative liminal moment, a transition from dark to light. And Teva is not only an arc, but a word, and also the letters themselves. Remember, words are made of words. How did God create the world? Words. Words are made of letters. These letters are sparks, the building blocks of creation. So the story is not only about arcs and windows, but also about sparks, words, and letters that in combination reenact every moment as a moment of wow. The liminal window is always being opened to let being our ecstatic outpouring of prayer and devotion and the letters of our life ascend. The opening is for the radiance of our inner light, the letters of our lives to ascend. We go from darkness in the world of the flood, to light. Nina, you are stomping on my watching for our time. So we're going to go to Jonathan Sachs, who's going to go back to Chizkuni, who says it's both. Remember? Recall that Chizkuni said that Noach had a precious stone for the dark days and a window for when the sun shone again. Something like that happened when it came to Torah also. During the dark days of persecution, Jewish mysticism flourished, and Torah was illuminated from within. During the benign days open to Jews, they had a window to the outside. And so emerged figures like Maimonides in the Middle Ages and Shimshon Raphael Hirsch in the 19th century, right? Meaning that that light came in from the outside in to illuminate Torah. I believe that the challenge for our time is to open a series of windows so that the world can illuminate our understanding of Torah and guide us as we seek to make. So it's got to be both. The light from within Torah, but also Torah has to be open to the light of what we would call the enlightenment, right? Thinking from outside the context of Torah that also illuminates the words and the ideas of Torah for our time. On a slightly different note, I don't know where this comes from. I try always to attribute everything I bring here. I don't know where it came from. My study partner sheet, Rabbi Amy, so from her sheet, I don't know to attribute to. On a slightly different note, the verse teaches that we should make a Zohar, a light, through the words, through the Teva, through the words of Torah that the tzaddik learns. This is Hasidic. That's how you know this is a Hasidic text, right? The words of Torah that the tzaddik learns, one can form tzara, trouble, into Zohar. Calamity and disaster are changed into radiance. The same letters rearranged.
Wow.
We're talking about letters, and you can rearrange them, and every moment there's a moment of creation. Then when we do it right, studying Torah from someone who is righteous and teaches, we can form out of tzara, take those letters, move them around, and we calamity, disaster into Zohar, into radiance. This, I would argue, is our obligation right now. This is our obligation to change what we are perceiving as tzara and experiencing as tzara somehow into Zohar. And we have to do that together.
That was my question, because I thought this took us back to the individual rather than the group.
So for Hasidism, in a vacuum, the tzaddik is teaching students.
Really?
Of course, man. Of course. Yes. That, as we would say. It's obvious, right? So yes, men. But I'm saying in progressive Judaism, I love this Hasidic interpretation that if letters are the building blocks of reality and creation, then it's our job to turn tzara to and then that is the collective endeavor. That is the job of the Jewish people, even according to Hasidism. But it is certainly the job of humanity now to figure that out. I'm not saying I have any answers. I'm saying I think this is the charge. particularly in America, right?
Now let's go to Rabbi Rachel Annisfeld. We're like Noach, surrounded by a flood of violence, death, and destruction. And we are in danger of falling into this storm, being sucked under, emotionally flooded, overwhelmed by despair and dread and powerlessness. To include in the ark a tzohar, which the Gemara understands as a precious jewel to be set in the ark so that it shined ketzoharayim, as brightly as the afternoon sun. The ark was to be aglow with light. Maybe you can imagine yourself this way, as a vessel of light inside the ark, a shining lantern floating along on a wild, dark sea. The raging waters threaten to overwhelm you to the light of love inside you with all your might, unwavering in your commitment. In the face of darkness, you are light. In the face of hatred, you are love. Fierce, unshakable love. Amidst the concreteness of the images of violence and destructions that we see, this love may seem like a mirage. That's okay. It does have an ephemeral quality to it, like the otherworldly light that shines through the prism of the precious gem. This dream, a hope, an imagining. It comes to us from another plane and speaks another language. It is not of the storm, but it is the boat that floats through the storm. If we lose ourselves in the storm, there is only storm. So now, especially in this moment, even if we are also by necessity in some way involved in the storm, we can still always hold fast to the light of love and kindness and hope, still cultivate it, treasure it, preserve it like a precious stone inside us. It may be otherworldly and ephemeral, but it is our essence. This is God in us.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.